Hey everybody, this is Garrett Fuller with MMORPG.com. I'm here with Richard Garriott, Lord British, and we just did an awesome panel on Shroud of the Avatar. And we had a bunch of questions for you, and our viewers would be very mad if I didn't ask you quickly.
Oh no, happy to answer. So fire away.
So you talked today, and it's the first time you introduced the idea of player housing actually having basements.
Basements and dungeons.
Basements and dungeons. Tell us a little about that and how you guys came into it.
Well, you know, when we're building a world that is where everybody literally is in one reality, no shards.
Yeah.
That means real estate is sort of the most valuable property there is,
Yes.
because you're not duplicating it across those shards. And so we knew that, you know, as people gain wealth and prominence in the game, they're going to want to have more places for self-expression. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that came up, and I'm not even sure, this might have even come from the community. I can't remember where the idea originally came from. But tomorrow we'll be releasing a fairly detailed expose on basements and even dungeons. So, you know, basements that go down to something like 4 levels deep, and then ultimately connections into much more expansive dungeons that players can own and decorate and operate.
Your own dungeons.
Yeah.
See? That's what it is. The other thing you just recently talked about, and you showed a little bit of it on the panel, was the crafting system. And I know that's new too for you guys. Star and I have talked a little bit about it. But kind of give us the scope, because you're known, and you mentioned it, for crafting and role-playing types of roles in the RPGs. So, you know, crafting's obviously close to your heart. So tell everybody kind of how you took the crafting system into this technique.
Well, even it's not something you know about the Ultimates of the past. Is I've been a big believer that you know, the world in which you move should not just be a visual tapestry. It should be interactive. You know, if you see a door, it should open and close. If you see a chest, it should open. If you see a torch, you should be able to light it and turn it off. If you see a musical instrument, you should be able to play it. Mm-hmm. And then all those things should have purpose. And that was what started this kind of sandbox reality, you know, 20 years ago for me.
Sure.
30 years ago even, really. And with UO, I think one of the great things Ultima Online had was that in addition to having combat professions, you could have role-playing professions, including crafting, which could be your whole life. You didn't. Unlike most other MMOs where you're first and foremost a combatant and you might also do some crafting. Right. In UO was the first time I think you could live a life as a crafter and never really be involved in combat.
Fishing.
For example, fishing. Which, as you know, the fishing simulation originally was 50-50 chance to catch a fish. That's it. And it was super popular, so we had to go back and enhance it.
Sure.
But now in our case, we said, okay, we want to take that much further. Mm-hmm. And so we've built a very strong interconnected set of crafting skills. You know, traditional things like blacksmithing and cooking and alchemy, all those sorts of high-level production skills, production crafting. But we back it up with everything from a wide breadth of resource gathering, whether that's farming or gathering or field dressing an animal. You know, when you field dress an animal, you might get skins that eventually go to the costumer or armorer. You might get poison sacks that go to the alchemist, or spider silk that goes to the alchemist. You might get food, meat, you know, that goes to the cook. So we start with the gathering area, then the refinement of a smelter or a weaver, then the final production of a chef, you know, or a costumer.
Awesome. I think it speaks to the permanence of all of it, which is something I know for Shroud you're really working on, which is keeping that your new phrase, which now we're going to have to coin a new site, the selective
multiplayer.
Selective multiplayer, right? So with selective multiplayer, how do you achieve that permanence for players? I mean, obviously with housing and dungeons and you're doing crafting, but that's a key aspect of the game. Again, what's important about that?
Well, again, in the world, if you put down roots, you get a house, let's say it's a farm, and let's say you have a farm stand in front of your farm, and there's a vendor in that farm stand.
Right.
Well, everyone who goes on that map will see your house, your farm stand, your vendor, and statistically, odds are you're not online anyway. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, most people are more offline than online.
Yeah, that's true.
And so anybody going by your house will see it exactly the same no matter what. It doesn't matter if they're in an instance, so to speak. They'll still see your house.
Right.
If you are online, you will obviously be in one of those instances. And we automatically sort anybody that's either in your friends list or in your friends' list will come into that same instance. Plus a bunch of strangers too, frankly. But once you get a certain in-number distance away from you, it's okay that they're in a separate instance and you can't see them because there's already a crowd around the front of your farm stand. How many strangers do you need to see before you go, yes, I'm popular?
Sure.
And so the fact that we've sorted some people into a different instance It's only when there's too many strangers
Right.
for us to cram in the same space with you.
I think personally, auction houses have taken away from the player vendors, which,
That's right.
which Ultima had and Dark Ages had.
And we're going back to that. So everything is local.
Yeah.
And and another thing we're doing on the same vein. So I know that you didn't ask this question, but
That's all right.
I just think it's a cool one, which is that the game will, of course, occasionally take things out of the economy. And so if you sell, a sword that you have crafted, first of all, if you craft a sword, it has your name on it as a crafter.
Right.
If you own that sword and you've killed 100 orcs, and so now this is the Orc Slayer, that will be a part of that sword. If you now take that sword and you sell it into the game, and it gets bought by the system and goes away,
Right.
we're not going to destroy it. We're going to put it back in the world as treasure somewhere else.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that way, all the things that people create are more or less permanently, as much as possible, the part of the world. And only if we need to, only if we have to create one from scratch, will there be a generic sword that ends up in the world.
I think it's awesome. I think it personalizes it for the player, which is critical. I love orcs, so don't say Orc Slayer. But honestly, I think it's great. I think seeing your sword down the line come out as treasure somewhere,
Right.
it's a great system. So, last but not least, everybody wants to play it.
Yeah.
How are you guys doing in terms of development? I know Star's been working hard. You brought them onto the team, which is great.
Yeah, which is invaluable. It's as you know, I got in trouble a few months ago by describing how few great game designers there are in the world.
No, we didn't talk about that at the PAX panel. No.
But Star is one of those greats.
Sure.
And and there were some places I frankly was stuck. And as soon as Star came on board, he helped fix those things up, and we're now moving forward much faster than we could have under just my aid. And really, Star is a guy that deserves credit for, frankly, UO being what it was. It's really Star. And so yes, we're proceeding very, very quickly, and our goal is to, before the end of this year, so 9 months after Kickstarter, we plan to release a prototype, we should call it, into the player's hands. I mean, it's not going to be the finished game.
Sure.
But it'll be enough for them to, create a character, buy a house, decorate it, have combats, craft things. I mean, it'll be a loosely held together, relatively full slice of the game, but far from finished. But at least the beginning.
I think it's great. I think it's great that you're putting in the players' hands early on too. Because when we see it with betas and stuff like that, but it's more and more you're breaking those barriers, allowing players into the game.
Well, and we sort of started that once you take crowdsource money, we feel at least that there's this obligation of we got to show people how we're spending their money.
Sure.
And since we're showing them every week the state of the game, if we were to let people in tomorrow, they shouldn't be surprised to see how broken it is.
Of course.
Because they've been watching the whole time. I mean,
Sure.
They know exactly what's working and what's not. So we don't have any fear of having them be disappointed when something's not finished, which is usually the reason you don't want people to see things that aren't finished.
Right.
And so we're going to just slowly have it into people's hands, and that way the people that are also helping contribute creatively can do a better job contributing because they'll be playing it and going, I see how my tent and the sleeping roll were used. I really ought to change it a little bit.
Sure. I think it's great. Rich, thanks so much for coming down to New York Comic Con. Richard Garriott, Shroud of the Avatar. We'll see you guys at MMORPG, and we're going to do some more interviews for the fans.
Please, anytime.
All right.